State won yesterday, but everyone is talking about Tom Izzo. In the second half, an irate Izzo ran up to freshman Aaron Henry during a timeout, tapped him in the midsection. Then in the huddle, he lunged at Henry and had to be held back. The problem appeared to be Henry not running back on defense. And after the game, Izzo explained himself.
You think there was one thing that would make me that angry? You don't know me very well. There was a bunch of things, and hey, he's playing a lot of minutes too. He's tired too. But when you're a freshman now at this time of year, you don't make mental mistakes on things that when we're telling a guy which way he goes or not running back, or there were some things Aaron didn't do a very good job of. And yet, you know what? Like happened, I did get after him, and he did respond, and he did make a couple big buckets, and he did make some big free throws. But that's not good enough. This is one and done time, The my bads are out the window. If they're my bads because that team played better or that guy played better, if it's my bad because I decided to jog back instead of sprint back, then it is your bad, and you're going to hear about it. I get a kick out of you guys. Get after somebody because you're trying to hold them accountable. I don't know what kind of business you're in, but I'll tell you what, if I was the head of a newspaper and you didn't do your job, you'd be held accountable. That's the way it is.
Okay, Shannon, did you like that explanation from Tom Izzo?
No, I didn't. Because guess what? In the newspaper business, Skip, those columnists, those editors, they get paid. That freshman's not getting paid, Tom Izzo. And I want to ask you, did you have any bads in that game? Every set that you called, every rotation that you asked that your team get in was the right one. Am I correct, Tom Izzo? Because if that's the case, I want to know why this other team scored. Because you was right on point. You see, Skip, the thing is, and he out there with the Arthur hand like he's Arthur, he all balled up. Let's just say for the sake of argument, Skip, I give him the first one. I said, you know what? He's upset because the guy missed a rotation. He's upset because the guy did not get in the right set in which he had called.
I think he's upset because he was jogging back on defense.
Okay, he jogged back. Okay. He met him at mid-court. He met him at the court.
He did.
He got into him, chewed him out. Okay, coach, you're right. I'm over with, done with. Why when you sitting in the huddle, you got to lunge at it and the players got to calm you down? That's when you know you've gone too far, when the players must be the adults in the room. What happens if they don't do that? Now he probably headbutts him. And I know everybody said, these kids are soft these days and you can't coach them. You're absolutely right. Because there's a time, guess what, Skip? You remember when Bobby Knight used to do all that? Bobby Knight coached like he coached in the 70s, the 80s, and even into the 90s. But it got to the 2000s, they say this is unacceptable behavior.
They did.
You can't raise your kids like your mom and your dad raised you. I couldn't raise my kids like my grandmother and my mom raised me.
True.
Times change.
Yep.
And he loves him. He loves him. Skip, you know what? There was a time that Bobby Knight loved Neil Reed. Bless your soul, Neil Reed passed away about 6 months ago at the age of 36. Come on, this is unacceptable. You made your point. You don't have to do the kid like that. You've already made your point. When you met him at the court, son, I need you to run back. Son, I need you to get to the rotation. Son, I need you to understand the set. You made that point crystal and abundantly clear. There was no need for the second go round at the kid. And another thing, Tom Izzo, you talk about the newspaper business. I don't know if you're going to hold the 12-year-old newspaper boy to the same standard you hold the columnists and the editors. I'm just saying, since we're in the newspaper business. Come on, Tom. You're better than, and I know a lot of his former players have come to his defense. These players, you can't do this and all that. You're absolutely right. Because the way I got coached, where, in football, Skip, if we did something wrong, we had to run, or we couldn't get water for hours. Can't do that anymore, Skip. That's not acceptable. Coaches grabbing the guy's face mask and doing all that. You can't do that. Tom knows better than this. Like I said, even if I concede and give him the first one, the second one was way, way, way overboard. So much so that a couple of his players, had to grab Tom Izzo and say, Coach, come on, sit down. And even then, one of the coaches came over his back and tried to, talk to the kid. I thought he went too far on the second go-round, Skip, even if I were to give you the first one. And I don't think the first one was called for. I believe you could have got your point across without doing that. Maybe you're not doing a good enough job explaining it to him. Because if he's still making those same mental mistakes, like you said, those same mental mistakes that he's making, that he made early in the year, that he's making now in these games, maybe you need to do a better job of coaching him up and explaining it to him.
So for all the great things I saw yesterday during the NCAA tournament, this took the life out of it, just watching this live, because this went wrong.
Yeah.
This got ugly. This was cringeworthy, where I had to look away from it after a while. I know Tom Izzo a little bit off camera. He's very different off camera. He can be a fun guy to be around.
Right.
He can be charming. He's got a lot of friends in the national media.
Yes.
And I think he cultivates those friendships with a purpose. He's a good college basketball coach. I'm not sure he qualifies as a great college basketball coach, but we could debate that.
Yeah.
But this was just a bad look for college basketball and a worse look for a Michigan State that Lord knows has had its share of scandal, right?
Yeah.
And if you know Tom Izzo, he grew up with Steve Mariucci in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, wanting to be a football player like Steve was, and Steve obviously became a very good football coach. Izzo wanted to coach football. Izzo coaches basketball like it's football.
Yeah.
Izzo had the infamous rebounding drill, and I'm pretty sure they had to do away with it because of all the things you just said, because it's now. But he used to make his players in their rebound drill put on helmets and shoulder pads to fight for rebounds, where they could go full contact going after the basketball. So he's built like that. His classic quote is, "Players play, but tough players win." So he wants you to attack the game of basketball and do it the right way, all out, 100%. So he's been known for doing this because he's right out of the Bobby Knight mold.
Right.
And Calhoun at Connecticut was known for jumping in his player's face. And I think Izzo, his idol was more Woody Hayes, college football, who just went finally completely over the edge. He wouldn't have lasted long in today's world either, right?
No.
But he went so far as to take a swing at a rival player at the end of the play in the Gator Bowl. And that was pretty much it for Woody Hayes. So I hark back to all the coaches I've known. I had the honor of knowing Coach Wooden, John Wooden, right here in Los Angeles.
Westwood.
The Wizard of Westwood. Arguably the greatest college basketball coach.
It'd be hard to argue.
Up there, okay. And he was such a gentle soul, but he was firm. He was a disciplinarian, as Bill Walton will be the first to tell you.
Yes.
Right? But he did it off camera. He did it behind closed doors.
Right.
He didn't do it during the game. He would get up into a play, he would tell you what's what.
Yeah, right.
But again, this, and then I had the honor of getting to cover Phil Jackson, get to know him pretty well. He was the complete flip side of this.
Right.
He just sat back. All of his teaching would be done off the court, away from basketball, right? When the game starts, he's pretty much letting the players decide the game.
Right.
And he would never, ever get in any player's face. Now, he's coaching professional basketball as opposed to college. But one guy who was, to me, the greatest coach ever in college and pro basketball, if you combine, was Larry Brown. And he would get upset and get in players' faces occasionally, but nothing like this, because this is over the edge.
Right.
This goes psycho. This is the dark side of a Tom Izzo who's better than this, right? Isn't he a better coach than that?
Skip, even if you give him the first one,
Yeah.
even if you say, son, I need you to sprint back. Son, you missed a set.
Yeah.
Son, how you going to miss that rotation? Understand, and I was reading what Reggie Miller said. I mean, you would find it hard to believe that Tom Izzo was acting like this after they just went on the 10-0 run. So I get that. But what I really got the big problem with is that now, you like to think we've had a cooling off period.
Yeah.
We sitting down and around in the huddle,
That's a good point.
and he lunges again. At what point in time? Because so now you're telling me, Tom, you're not doing a good job of teaching him. Because if you got to have another response on top of the response you've already given him, there's a disconnect somewhere along the line.
So what has happened to Tom Izzo's Michigan State teams the last 3 March Madnesses? What's happened? We go back to 2016. Remember? Infamous.
flamed out.
First round exit, the hands of Middle Tennessee State, right? That was a 2-15 matchup, and the 15 won that one. Then there's probably no shame in this, but they lost in 2017 second round to Kansas, who was the 1 seed. They were the 9 seed. And they lost by 20, so it wasn't even close.
Right.
And then last year, as a 3 seed, they lost to 11 seed Syracuse in the second round. Not great. So I'm suggesting here that the pressure yesterday was on the coach more than on the players.
Absolutely.
I think it was manifesting itself that the coach is saying, "Don't do this to me."
Right.
This is me. I'm the king of this castle here at Michigan State.
The frustration, Skip, those early round exits.
Yeah.
He's a 2 seed now.
Yeah.
He didn't want what happened 3 years ago
Yeah.
to happen again. He's talking about, oh, these my bads. Yeah, that my bad that the 215 is a 2 seed is gone again at the hands of a 15. That would be your bad.
Man, I just, Aaron Henry. How about Henry Aaron, the old Henry Aaron? Would he have taken this? Probably not.
But Skip,
Right?
the notion is that all these, and I get it, Skip, because I grew up in the era of the coaches were different.
Sure.
They talk to you different, but you can't do that. This is a different time now.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard for people to understand that times evolve, that you must evolve your way of coaching, your way of teaching, your way of thinking? It is so hard. People are, man, I remember, okay, I get that. Because I grew up hard too. I played football in the late 70s and the 80s and the 90s, well, the 70s and the 80s, and